Welcome back to the Unstuck movement. I am your host, Rob Z. This platform was created to help you break the chains that have been holding you back in your life. So I love to have stories of perseverance and stories of breakthrough for examples so that you know that it can happen to you. I want to shout out the sponsor who makes this platform possible, the Connected Leaders Academy, and the leader of the CLA, Jose Escobar. The Connected Leaders Academy has been an amazing group for me to meet incredible entrepreneurs, incredible authors, speakers, and leaders who have had a huge impact on my life. So if you want to up your game, you want to improve your network and take your life, take your business to the next level, check out the Connected Leaders Academy. All of the details are in the notes. For this episode today, we have the incredible Kevin M. Yates in the house, globally recognized as the L&D Detective, investigates and unravels training effectiveness mysteries for renowned brands like Grant Thornton, Kantar, McDonald's, and Meta. Leveraging his expertise, he reveals the impact of learning on human and business performance, sharing his insights on global stages, and actively contributes to the training and development community, while also serving as president and founder of Meals in the Meantime, a nonprofit addressing food insecurity through pop-up food pantries. I absolutely love that. I love your mission. Kevin, thank you for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
I'm happy to be here, man. What an introduction. I'm like, who was the dude he's describing?
I'm looking right at him. So I love to open these episodes up with a powerful question. And I love this question. I love the concept of the truth having no consequence. And I want to ask you this. How have you learned in your life and in your business to live in a way where there's no consequence for telling the truth?
That's a great question, great way to kick it off. And I like to think that I'm on this journey of just living authentically, right? And that means for me being rooted in the truth about who I am, what I do, and how I do it. And I'm trying to let that transcend across all areas of my life, again, both personally and professionally. So, one of the ways in which I have really come to this idea that there is no consequence for telling the truth is through the work that I do, right? Which is measuring the impact of training and learning. And from a professional perspective, we don't always tell the truth about that in terms of what it is and the fact that it is difficult and possible. So I tell the truth about that. And I'm at a point in my career where there really is no consequence to me for telling the truth. As cliche as it sounds, the truth will set you free. I believe that. And so I tell the truth with the way in which I practice my profession. And that also is true to my personal life, right? I am getting to a point now where I am learning how to, again, just be honest, open, transparent, because I believe that there is no consequence for doing that. It's not an easy journey. I don't ever want to give the impression that this journey of truth is like an easy one or one that I got to easily. It's an ongoing journey, but it is one that I am happy to be on, and it's a good place to be, just in terms of living authentically and being as honest and open and transparent as possible. Hope that answers your
Yeah,
question.
absolutely, man. And it's really interesting because I titled this episode, "The Truth Has No Consequence." But, throughout life, and I don't want to say we're encouraged to not tell the truth, but it feels like in many situations, depending on how you were brought up, it seems beneficial to not tell the truth because of the consequences that are going to come along with it. But anybody who's been a liar in their life, I know that I have, there's been situations where I should not have lied about this. I should not have embellished this or taken this story in this direction because of the consequences that came along with not telling the truth. So for you, like what prompted you to live in truth like this and to seek that? Because I think for a lot of people, like I know inherently we want to seek the truth. We want to seek to be somebody who's very truthful, but that becomes that there's a lot that's required with that, and a lot of discipline and leadership that's required with that. What's that journey been like for you?
Yeah, and I'm going to use my professional experience to to tell you that story, right? And so in my work, the work of measuring the impact of training and learning on human and business performance, this is work that I've been doing for quite a few years. And at the front end of this journey, the front end of this work, I wasn't really paying attention to both sides of the story. One side of the story is that measuring the impact of training and learning is possible. The other side of the story is that it's difficult. The other side of the story is that it's hard. It can feel complicated, uncertain, unsure, ambiguous, and there are times where it can even feel unattainable. But I never dealt with that side of the story. Like, in these global speaking engagement opportunities that I have on world stages and podcasts and in my writing, I was always focused on here's what you do to measure the impact of training and learning on human and business performance. But I never dealt with the truth that measuring impact on human and business performance is both difficult and possible. And so, what I realized maybe about 3 or so years ago is that I was spinning my wheels in certain situations where I didn't have the answer or couldn't find the answer or couldn't figure it out. But I never talked about that. I never talked about behind the scenes what it looks like when I do the work that I do. I never talked about the fact that there are days where I am scratching my head, which is probably why I don't have any hair now. But there are times where I'm scratching my head trying to figure it out, but I wasn't sharing that story. I was only sharing the stories about here's what you do to measure impact. I wasn't transparent, open and honest to say, yes, even I, the L&D detective, the dude that gets the recognition for knowing how to do this, I struggle too. It's hard sometimes. And there are times where I can't find the answer for one reason or another, right? And I wasn't sharing that story. And so what I have figured out now is that it's important to tell both sides of that story, that measuring the impact of training and learning is difficult and it's possible. So I have to talk about what's difficult and I also have to talk about what makes it possible. So I think that I connect with people in a much better way now, and people connect with me because I am sharing my humanity, right? I am sharing the fact that I'm not perfect. I'm not, or rather, I am sharing the fact that I don't always have the answer. And so I'm telling the truth about that. And for me, there's no consequence to telling the truth. There are only advantages to gain by telling the truth because I want to keep it real, to borrow modern day vernacular. And I don't want to set anybody up for failure. And I believe that not telling the truth has the potential to set people up for failure because I've not talked about the difficulties and the challenges, and most important, how to overcome those difficulties and challenges. So I just tell the truth about that. And again, I don't think there's a consequence to me for telling the truth about both sides of the story for the work that I do. I think that there's only benefits to telling the whole story. Does that make sense?
Mhm. Absolutely. And the word I think of is vulnerable, right? And the more vulnerable you are, the more breakthrough people can have through you, right? So it's difficult to come to that place. It can be really difficult to come to that point. And I recall you and I having a conversation before, and you were talking about how you'd be on stage speaking of these, the powers that you have, the way that you help and you serve and you impact businesses and you impact lives, and you come off stage and you felt this sense of like self-doubt, this sense of like low self-worth when you're up there like crushing it, right?
Yeah.
And really helping people. And I think about this often because this is something that we think somebody who's such an expert at what they do, especially when they're talking in the world of L&D or of leadership, right, that they have it all figured out. But that's not the truth. It's
Yeah.
we're all going through a journey.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you brought that up, man, because it's important, right? I want to not only share what I know, but I want to share my humanity. And I'm glad that we had that conversation where I shared with you some of the challenges and struggles that I even still have, right? Not as much as I used to, but I still do, right? And so it's going back to that not having any consequences for telling the truth. And the truth is, I have struggled for years with uh, self-esteem and self doubt, rather, and not always having positive self-view or positive self-image. So you're right. I am fortunate to have been on stages literally across the world, well connected in the industry in which I work, get a lot of accolades and recognition and acknowledgement for the work that I do. And I'm very grateful for that. But a lot of times, what sits behind that is me questioning myself, like, okay, Kevin, do you really know what you're doing? Like, do you really know what you're talking about? Can you back up all of this good and great information that you're giving? Is there a point at which you're going to fail? What happens if you can't figure something out? And all of that just kind of floods my thoughts, right? It just kind of takes over. I really shouldn't let it take over, but it does. And so I think it's important to be transparent, to share with people that, there's this dude and this guy that you see on stage, that appears to be very confident, very sure. And most of the time I am, right? But again, would there be no consequence for me to tell the truth? There are days where I do experience self doubt. There are days where I'm not so certain and so sure. Fortunately, the days where I do feel confident and sure are greater in number than the days where I don't feel as confident and sure. But I just think it's important for people to know that, I'm human, just like anybody else, which means that, yes, I am recognized as an expert, and I appreciate that. I do believe I know what I'm doing. I do believe I know what I'm talking about. But there are days where I just don't have that same level of certainty and confidence, right? It's just when my humanity creeps in. Yeah.
What strategies do you use when you're facing something like that, when you're facing that self doubt? Because, I mean, obviously, you have the proof that you do know what you're doing, right? But those things still creep in. Do you have any strategies that you use personally to help you with that?
Yeah, one of the strategies I use is to not give the voices in my head. Now, not that I'm, hearing actual voices, but the essence of what I'm saying is that when those thoughts and ideas of self doubt creep up, what I do is go back to feedback that I have received from others in my profession and in the global training, learning, and talent development community. So if I can believe what people are saying, believe in the experiences that people have had with me in terms of how I engage, how I work with them. Um, if I can believe that, then it helps me push away some of those doubtful ideas, some of those uncertain ideas, because external feedback is a gift, right? The feedback that we get from others in terms of them sharing their experience with us, that's a gift. And so I get a lot of good feedback. I get a lot of great um, um, back and forth in conversation with people who share with me how I've helped, how I have helped improve the work that they're doing. So I choose to believe that. I choose to believe that, and in believing that, and in receiving that positive feedback, it kind of helps affirm my confidence, my self-esteem, and the ability that I have to do the work that I do. Yeah.
How did you get yourself to this place in your life, right? So coming up, younger Kevin to where you are now, the L&D Detective speaking on stages around the world. I mean, you've worked with giant companies like Meta, like Facebook, McDonald's, making a big impact in these areas. Who were you then compared to who are you now? And what would you say to your younger self?
Who am I then compared to who am I now, and what would I say? So I think that at the start of my journey in the training and learning and talent development profession, I was not sure about where I had the best fit, because there are so many roles within the discipline that are available, right? So there is training facilitator, there is instructional designer, there's learning operations, there's learning technology, there's leadership development, there's onboarding. So there are a lot of roles. And I served in many roles over the years and have had some good experiences, but I've always had that feeling like, okay, Kevin, what's next? What are you really good at? Like you're doing great in a lot of these things, but what are you really good at? What are you really passionate about? And when I discovered measurement, Rob, I discovered my sweet spot. I love instructional design, I love learning operations, learning technology, and all of that. But there was something about learning measurement, impact analytics that just triggered something in me. I don't know what it is. I can't even articulate it. But when I discovered that I have the ability to measure the impact of training and learning in ways that reveal actual results, it was just like a light bulb moment, and it sparked a passion, it sparked an interest and a commitment, that I'm still living in and living with, and it's a really good place to be. I think that every experience I've had leading up to now was meant to prepare me for the work that I'm doing with measurement and helping organizations measure the impact of their training and learning solutions, I am exactly where I believe I am supposed to be at this moment in time in my life. It's a great place to be. I'm excited to be right here. I love to be where I am. You know, we talked a little bit about some of the challenges and struggles that I've had with, you know, self doubt and all that. I'm feeling really good about where I am. That self doubt is kind of going away. The more I do the work, the more confident I am about it. The more I help clients, the more I can see how I am actually making an impact with the clients that I am working. So the the journey has been one of discovery, kind of experimentation, and just getting to this point where I'm really sure about who I am and what I want to do. So that's what my journey looks like.
What would you say to your younger self as
You
you've
know,
evolved over the years?
okay, I forgot about that, and
That's
that's an
okay.
important one. What I would say to my younger self, if my younger self literally walked in the door today, I would say to him, be kind to yourself and forgive yourself.
Mm.
Don't be harder on yourself than you need to be. I would encourage my younger self to practice forgiveness to self, practice compassion for self, practice caring for self. I think that quite often we can care about others and practice compassion for others in ways that we can't do for our own selves, right? And I think that we have to do that. I think it's healthy to do that. And I think it's important to do that. And I've not always done that. And so, what I would say to younger L&D Detective or younger Kevin M. Yates is practice compassion and kindness and forgiveness to yourself. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I'm
man,
still, I'm still, I'm still learning that. I'm still
it,
learning that.
it's such good advice you have to hear over and over and over again because I'm like you, my own worst critic, right? So it can be really easy for me to see somebody else and be like, give them the benefit of the doubt, let them off the block, they're okay.
Yeah.
But for myself, it's like, no, Rob, you screwed this up. You didn't do this thing right. This could have been better. Picking out all the things that are bad instead of all of the things that are blessings in your life. So that's really good. And I don't think you could ever hear that enough. I know I need to hear that because I need to tell my inner self that all the time. Like, listen, you're doing a good job. Be cool with
Yeah.
yourself. So we got to shout out our sponsor real quick, the Connected Leaders Academy. Any leader who's watching this right now, really anybody who's watching this right now, can benefit from the CLA. When we come back here in just 60 seconds, I want to talk about your own power and how you can have as much of it or as little of it as you choose to own. And I can't wait to dive into that with you and to help other people find that power in themselves.
Hi, my name is Jose Escobar, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Connected Leaders Academy. We're a growing tribe, a community of entrepreneurs all over the world, globally, all across the country, high performers, titans of industry. If you're an entrepreneur and you're looking to grow personally and professionally, scale your influence, develop your skill sets, move the needle in your business, more clients, more money, more profit, the bottom line, and of course, grow your circle and your network like never before, this is where you want to be. Join the Connected Leaders Academy today. We are scaling massively. We want to welcome you in. Check me out on Instagram and on Facebook, the @ JAESCO25. We look forward to having you join us. Take care.
So, Kevin, when we're talking about the power that we have in our lives, the internal power that we possess, I I love to ask people, the biggest lessons they've had in their lives. And one of the things that you brought to me was I can have as much or as little power as I choose to own. What does that mean to you?
So I think that there are times where we react and respond to situations that may have been prompted by someone in a way that does not serve us well, right? And so what I mean by that is we may be provoked to anger, or we may be provoked to jealousy, or we may be provoked to frustration, right? And so what I have figured out is that in terms of my emotions and my headspace, I own as much or as little of that as I give away, right? And so rather than saying that someone provoked me to anger, I kind of shift that to say, what have I allowed myself to experience in this moment of difficulty? right? So I don't want to give too much power away because by allowing someone else to take me to places where I don't want to go or where I don't want to be, that means that I have given up that amount of power to that other person or that other situation, right?
Mhm.
So I am starting to practice in the moment of a particular situation, right? How do I stop and own me, right? How do I stop and own how I'm going to respond to this person or how I'm going to respond to this situation? Rather than blaming someone else for taking
Mhm.
me there or putting me there, I have now figured out that in any given situation, I always own me, right? Even though it might be a situation that provokes me to anger, I own how I react or how I respond, right? I can't say you made me angry or you provoked me to this, right? No, I don't want to do that anymore. I want to be able to say I own how I react and how I respond to situations and to people. Now, as I said earlier, keeping it real, being honest. Am I able to do that all the time? No. But I am on a journey to be able to do it all the time. And I am doing it, I am now able to do it more than, say, I was able to do it 2 or 3 years ago, which means that there's progress, right? So, again, I don't want to give the impression that this journey of owning my emotions and my feelings and how I react and respond to situations has been easy, because it hasn't. It's been very necessary because, again, I own as much or as little as I give away to situations and to people. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. And I'm taking down notes as you're saying that. That's such a good question to ask. How do I stop and own me? That's a great question, because we could ask ourselves that question about 30 or 40 or 50 times a day, right?
Yeah.
There's different
Yeah.
conversations or situations that pop up in life that, man, it's like, how do I stop this, and how do I own me and who I am, and not
Yeah.
let the world and outside influences control how I'm feeling, what I'm doing, how I'm approaching something. So that's a really good question to ask.
Yeah.
And you also said, what have I allowed myself to experience, right? We have a choice. And this is, like you said, it's so hard to master this, but it's so, when the moments you can catch it are so important, because we're experiencing things all day long, but we have a choice of allowing ourselves to fall into that, or to not allow ourselves to fall into that, whatever it might be. And usually it's the negative things that unconsciously will pull us into something that we don't want to experience, we don't want to feel, we don't need to, right? It's not something that's going to benefit us. And as you were talking, I was just thinking, like, wow, this is why I do this podcast, because these questions are questions that you need to have at the forefront of your mind all the time.
I
You
agree.
have to be on watch, right? You're the only one who can watch over yourself and your mind and your thoughts and how you're thinking and acting, right? You can stand guard there at the gate of that.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I really like about this conversation and what we're thinking about and talking about right now, again, is this idea of taking ownership of what we own, right? Because when you give emotions and feelings away and give someone else power and control for that, you've lost a lot. You've given away
Mm-hmm.
what you own, right? Because the reality is that, people and situations and circumstances can provoke us to anger or sadness or disappointment or any one of a number of emotions or feelings, right? But if we have a good level of self awareness, we can kind of sense where our mind, our head, and our heart is headed in a particular situation and kind of talk like that self talk. It's like, okay, Kevin, I kind of see where you are right now. You might want to respond this way, but don't do that because that might not be the best response. So, this is the self talk, right? I'm talking to myself and I'm like, okay, in this moment, what is the best way for me to respond? Or in this moment, maybe I don't need to respond. There are times, I have a good friend and she says to me, there are times where the best thing to say and the best thing to do is nothing in that moment. We don't always have to react or respond in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we need to stop and figure out what is the most appropriate response. And if the most appropriate response is to not respond in that moment, then do that, right? But don't give your power away. Don't allow someone else or something else to take you to a place where you don't want to go, where you don't want to be. And again, realize that you own that. You
Mhm.
can't always say, someone took me there. As I said earlier, no, we got to own that. We got to own that, and we can own where we let people take us.
Yeah, and especially in the society that we live in today, everything's so instant. I think about when you're saying that, like you don't have to respond or you don't have to constantly react or respond to what's happening. Text messages. You feel like I get a text, I got to respond right away, right? You get messages on social media, you feel like you got to respond right away, and there's a lot of power in that, giving that space, letting that breathe, because you're taking ownership of your own life. So it's like remembering that all the time. The more immediate life gets, the more you have to remember I don't have to be at the beck and call of everything that's happening to me in my life, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, yeah, yep. I got a quick example of that, Rob. I've made a conscious decision as it relates to social media, which is what we're talking about right now. So on my phone, right, on my phone, I chose where I want to activate notifications and where I don't, right? Because to your point, we have this thing now where we feel as though we have to react and respond immediately to things. Now, obviously, there are emergencies where we need to, family emergencies and such. But one of the things that I've done, for example, for text messages, I've taken off the notification on my phone. So I look at text messages when I choose to look at them. I
Mm.
own that. That's an example of me owning that, right? So there's something for me. There's just something about this constant disruption during the day of a bing because I got a text message, right? Um, I've decided that yes, I need to be on the lookout for text messages, but I choose when I look at them. So that's just an
Mhm.
example of me owning what I can own, right?
That's really good. And I still have my text messages notification on, but most of my other ones are turned off. One of the things I did do, I turned my phone to black and white
Okay.
because it gives the phone a lot less control over me. Also, like the fact that there's no color helps me a lot in not wanting to engage with it as much. Like it's not as glimmery. It's not as catchy to the eye, right? So there's just like strategies like that that can really change the dynamic on how you're using technology. I love you turn text messages off. I'm going to challenge myself to do that for a day and see how it goes. You got to have a system set up. So this is the kind of stuff. So what is your system for that? Do you have like an every hour you look at it, or what is it?
So my system for that is I'll usually check for text messages every 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the time of day, right? I tend to do that more in the evening than I do during the day. So during the day, I might check for text messages maybe every 45 minutes to an hour, right? And I'll check maybe a bit more frequently in the evening because, that's when people are off work and you got family and friends who want to chat, reach out, and all of that. But at the end of the day, what I really love is that I have decided to own that, right? So I can't, here's a good example. See, I can't get mad at somebody if they're texting me, I don't know, every 20 minutes, right? You can either get annoyed or frustrated at that, or I can take the notifications off of my phone, right? And just look at those text messages when they come in. So that's an example of ownership. I can own that. I have the power. I'm not going to give that away. I can choose how often I want to check my phone for text messages. Kevin owns that, right? So since I own it, I'm going to own it.
That's really good, and this is like a small microcosm of how this applies to like everything in your life. Like it can really start with your phone, and also, and I've done this. I've muted people that tend to text on repeat or send like 10 texts at once. I just mute that person so they can still text me. My phone just doesn't vibrate when it happens.
Right,
That's
right.
very beneficial. So when you're talking about L&D, learning and development, you're working with businesses and organizations. What do you bring to the table when you're working with them? Is it the stuff we've been talking about today, the context of helping them build their self-worth and self-discipline and things of that nature? What do you usually do when you're working with clients?
Think that what I bring to clients, Rob, is the truth. And the
Mm.
truth is, measuring the impact of training and learning is difficult and impossible. So, what I am bringing is this ability to manage everybody's expectations, right? And I think that by managing expectations through telling the truth, it helps people. It helps the organizations and the businesses that I serve because it's like everybody is looking for this magic wand or this magic potion where this work that I do is just going to be easy or that it's always going to lead to the answer. Well, the reality is that there are times where the answer is there is no answer. And I am being transparent about that. And I'm telling the truth about that when I work with clients, helping them with their measurement strategies. And by telling the truth, I can focus on what's actionable and achievable versus what is idealistic and aspirational. So, what I bring to clients is a truth based perspective and an action based methodology that is rooted in what is possible while acknowledging what is difficult. It's going back to telling the whole story, both ends of the story. And I think that what clients appreciate with working with me is the fact that I do tell the truth. I don't go in trying to create this scenario of unicorns and rainbows and pixie dust and magic potions and everything is going to work. That's not my approach. My approach is one where let's take a look at where this is hard. Let's take a look at what makes this difficult. And hey, guys, I'm here to help reveal what's possible. That's my role. That's the work that I do. And that's how I'm going to serve you best as a client. Did that make sense?
Yeah, man, I love that. Managing expectations by telling the truth. What a concept. What a concept.
Yeah.
I say
Well,
that because it's funny because we often think like, well, to manage people's expectations and to, try to keep the peace or, it comes down to like people pleasing. And when you talk about people pleasing, you're lying to people and lying to yourself usually to try to keep the peace, which doesn't actually keep the peace. So you're not telling the truth. You're not helping with expectations. You're not keeping the peace.
yeah. And
So
you don't want to overset expectations. It's not right
yeah.
and it's not fair. I don't want to be in situations where I can't do where I said what I can do. And telling the truth about that is what helps me do what I do best because
Hmm.
I'm not bound by fear of, uh-oh, what if I can't do what I promised I can do and all that. I don't have to deal with that. That's just not even a conversation. It's here's what I believe we can do successfully when it comes to measuring the impact of your training and learning programs. Now I know what you want to do aspirationally. I get it, but from a practical, real world, achievable, strategic focus, here's what we can do and here's what we can't do.
When you're talking about managing other people's expectations, because you can't control somebody's expectations sometimes in life in general. How have you personally learned how to manage your expectations in life? Because that's expectations can lead to disappointment. Is there a way you found to balance that for yourself?
Yeah, it's going to sound like I'm repeating myself, but it's telling the truth. It's
Hmm.
so just in terms of expectations, there is what is there's what we kind of believe, and then there's what we hope for, and then there's the truth. So when you mix belief, hope, and truth, it can be kind of like a delicate dance, if you will, as those three things kind of dance with each other. Um, I just try to lead with the truth. I try to manage my own expectations. So, for example, um, I really wish that I could have been an Olympic ice skater, and I'm telling the truth about that. The reality is, I'm not a good ice skater. So, and what I wanted to do, man, I wanted to be like a speed skater, like one of those Olympic speed skaters
Yeah, with the hand
going
behind
around.
the back. Yeah, going in
Yeah,
circles. Yeah.
that's what I wanted to do. Um, but I had to manage my own expectations because I'm not a good ice skater. That's the truth. Now,
Mm.
idealistically, aspirationally, yeah, I wanted to be an Olympic speed ice skater, but I had to manage my own expectations and say, dude, that's not you, and it's not going to be you. So, it's a nice thought, it's a nice idea, but I had to manage my own expectations and say that's just not going to happen for you because you're not good on the ice. Period. End of story. So, I mean
I
that.
love episodes like this. I get so many good notes, man. So belief plus hope plus truth. So good. As we wrap this thing up, I love talking about favorite quotes and sayings that we live by. You said, I am my own worst enemy or my own best advocate. I think I know what you're going to say for this, but how do you become the best advocate for yourself? How can people listening or watching right now become the best advocates for themselves?
The way in which I believe to be the best advocate for yourself is to thine own self be true. Just tell yourself the truth. Tell yourself the truth about who
Mm.
you are. Tell yourself the truth about where there's opportunity for you to do something different. Tell yourself the truth about how great you already are. So it's that positive self talk. It's being honest with yourself about all that is good about you, and all where there is an opportunity to be a better you, right? So at the end of the day, it all goes back to telling yourself the truth, and really not letting there be any consequences for doing that.
Yeah, man. I love that. That is so good. So, Kevin, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed this. Your website is kevinmyates.com, LinkedIn and Facebook, Kevin M. Yates. Anything you want to leave the audience with before we sign off?
No, other than what I've already said, just remember there's no consequence to you for telling the truth.
Thank you so much, sir, for being a part of the Unstuck movement.
Thank you.